Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya Sutara Shri Shriman is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. The Holy Appearance Day of His Divine Grace Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Haribol. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. Jai Sisi Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from the introduction to the Vaishnav Songbook by ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's Songbook, and it is entitled A Glimpse into the Life of Thakur Bhaktivinoda. Thakur Bhaktivinoda led a life of incessant labor and activity for Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He effected such immense good in the world that his work is only to be compared with the unbounded works of Sri Chaitanya himself and the Goswamis. It was the spiritual attempts and divine writings of this individual that turned the scale and led the intelligent and educated community to believe in the noble precepts and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. If we look back 1 century, we cannot but be astonished to find how degraded was the condition of the Vaishnava faith, which had its pure origin in the deep and majestic spiritual philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even vastly learned pundits could not fathom the super excellent precepts of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. Yet due to incredulity, born of the ignorance of uncultured men, the Vaishnava faith had been degraded and was considered a beggar's excuse for living at the expense of society. It was by sheer love for the Godhead that Thakur Bhaktivinoda expounded the deep philosophy which had remained concealed in the pages of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and the Bhagavatam. By his action toward divine service and also by his words, set in simple language to be easily understood by readers in general, he has given this philosophy to the world. It is his writings and his divine unparalleled character that have helped to produce a class of educated and enlightened men who are now proud of their Vaishnava faith and of their acquisition of the spiritual knowledge of the pure and sublime philosophy of Sri Krishna, on which the stern teachings of Sri Chaitanya are based. Though born in opulent circumstances on September 2nd, 1838, Thakur Bhaktivinoda, who was given the name Kedarnath Dutt, had to meet many difficulties in his early life. His childhood was spent at his maternal grandfather's house at Birnagar, Ulagram, from where he came to Calcutta at the age of 13 after the death of his father. After he completed his education, he was requested to be present at the time of his paternal grandfather's death. His grandfather, Raja Ballabha Dutt, had been a famous personality of Calcutta and had retired to a lonely place in Orissa to spend his last days as an ascetic. He could predict the future and knew when he would die, since he could commune with supernatural beings. Thakur Bhaktivinoda was present at the eventful time when that great soul passed away, and after receiving his grandfather's instructions, he visited all of the major temples and ashrams of the state of Orissa. Thakur Bhaktivinoda then entered the educational service and introduced English education into the state of Orissa for the first time. He wrote a small book about all the ashrams of the state and mentioned an ashram which was on his ancestors' property. I have a quote, I have a small village, Choti Mangalapur, in the country of Orissa, of which I am the proprietor, he wrote. In that village is a religious house which was granted by my predecessors to the holy men as a holding of free rent land. The head of the institution entirely gave up entertaining such men as chanced to seek shelter on a rainy night. This came to my notice, and I administered a severe threat that his lands would be cruelly resumed if in the future complaints of inhospitality were brought to my knowledge. Unquote. Bhaktivinoda Thakur later took to the government service and was transferred to Bengal. In one town he gave a historic speech on Srimad Bhagavatam, which attracted the attention of thousands. He made the world know what hidden treasures pervade every page of the Bhagavatam, which should be read by all persons having a philosophical turn of mind. He was transferred some years later to a town called Champaran. In this town there was a Brahmadaitya living in a great banyan tree, and he was being worshipped by many degraded people. A Brahmadaitya is a type of ghost. One day the father of a famous girl scholar came to Bhaktivinoda for alms, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur once employed him in reading the Bhagavatam under the shade of the banyan tree, which was the abode of the ghost. After 1 month, the Bhagavatam was completed, and then and there the tree crashed to the ground, and the ghost was gone for good. Everyone was thankful for this act, except the few dishonest persons who were worshiping the ghost. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it says, that there were hidden treasures in every page of the Bhagavatam. In my country, that is called Thakura. There's treasure. The greatest treasure, that is Krishna consciousness. Bhaktivinoda next move was to Puri. The government commissioner was much pleased to get him in his division, and he asked him to watch the affairs of the temple of Jagannath on behalf of the government. It was through Bhaktivinoda Thakur's exertions that many malpractices were checked, and the time for the offering of foods before the deity was regulated to its extreme punctuality. He was a government agent, yet his business was checking the puja. That's like if there was a mayor of Los Angeles who would come over and tell Rabindranath that you have to make the offerings more prompt, you have to dress the deities like that. Can you imagine? The Bhaktivinoda Thakur was working for the government, and he was helping manage the Jagannath temple. Thakur Bhaktivinoda was especially entrusted to quell the rise against the government of one Bhishikashain, who declared himself to be an incarnation of Mahavishnu. During the course of his investigation, Thakur Bhaktivinoda found him to be a hoax and a culprit, and charged him with transgressing government injunctions. After his trial, the fellow was sentenced to imprisonment for 1.5 years, but he died shortly after in jail. This man was really possessed of unnatural powers, but as they were the outcome of a non-spiritual practice, he had to submit to the Thakur when the latter wanted him to do so. Bhishikashain was held in dread by the common people, and everyone warned Srila Bhaktivinoda not to admonish him, even for the sake of justice, in view of the serious consequences that a yogi would inflict. But although the Thakur was not a man of ostentation and did not allow people to know his true qualities and spiritual strength, He easily cut down the demonic power of the impostor. With the fall of Bishikashain, there rose an impostor Balaram at another village, and there were also other so-called incarnations of God, but their plans were similarly frustrated. Bishikashain was claiming to be Vishnu, and when he was arrested by Bhaktivinoda Thakur for his claims, he had mystic powers, and the entire family of Bhaktivinoda Thakur grew very sick with high fever. I think I read somewhere 105 fever. Everyone, including Bhaktivinoda Thakur, became ill. And the Thakur, even at the expense of his family, would not go back on his conviction of this demoniac personality. And he understood that his power, like the power of most demons, lies within their hair. He had these long curls, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had his hair cut, and his power was removed. His family got well, and he got well, and ultimately the rascal committed suicide. So this is the nature of this material world. Even today, the biggest demons on the planet have these strange hairstyles, different colors, sometimes even orange. I won't get political, but their power, their demoniac power, is in their hairs. It's one of the reasons our devotees, we keep our hair very short, so we don't use demoniac. There was another great demon in the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. His name was Maharaj Vena. Vena was so cruel of a leader that when he came to a place, they would announce, "Here comes cruel Vena." The citizens were considered to be like ants on a burning log, because on one end of the log were the dacoits and the thieves who thrived during the reign of Maharaj Vena, and on the other side was the cruel rule of Maharaj Vena himself, who was torturing the citizens and giving everyone a terrible time. And in those days, they didn't even have impeachment. There was not a government power that could impeach the rule of King Vena. By Krishna's grace, nowadays there is impeachment. Their impeachment was that above the ruler, above the Kshatriya, was the Brahmanas, the saintly persons. And as the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Yada deveshu vedeshu, goshu vipreshu sarushu, dharma mai chavidvesha, sava asu vanasyati. When one is envious, Yada deveshu, of the demigods, vedeshu, of the Vedic literatures, goshu, of the cows, vipreshu, of the Brahmins, sadhushu, of the saintly persons, dharma, of religiosity, and Krishna says, mai, ultimately, me, Krishna says, sava asu vanasyati. Very soon that person and their civilization shall be destroyed. So, the Brahmins actually destroyed this Vena. We as devotees, we don't worry, and we are not taking politics in our own hands, because we know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's a reason for making such arrangements. Just like we heard last night, there was the movie Hare Krishna, all about the acharya of our movement, Samstakacharya, Samstapakacharya, Srila Prabhupada. That at the time, the biggest crooks in the history of America were running America, making trades of arms and dope for arms, or arms for dope and hostages with enemy countries, so-called, and actually waging war on drugs and distributing drugs simultaneously. CIA. Common knowledge. And the president was Vena Jr. Of course, no one could be as cruel as King Vena. One Richard Milhouse Nixon. We can say because he was impeached and resigned from being president of the United States. And at that time, Prabhupada had just come. And people were disillusioned. They were like ants on a burning log. On one end, the corrupt government, on the other end, the corrupt people. And so when Prabhupada came, by Krishna's grace, Krishna helped him. People were very eager to hear someone so sincere and serious, who would not cheat them in any way, shape, or form. Srila Prabhupada's true nature. And so they took to Krishna consciousness like anything. Even they told a story in Russia. Prabhupada stopped the plane in Russia, at the time communist Russia, just for I think 1-2 days. And 2 boys were there. They came in the room and Prabhupada called them in. He would talk with anyone. And he gave them the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And within a very short time, of course, Prabhupada left very soon. He couldn't stay. And in a very short time, after visiting Moscow, there were tens of thousands of devotees, even illegally, hundreds, thousands. To this day, so many devotees in Russia. We see them all over the world. Here in Los Angeles, I think there's more Russians than Americans. No offense. At least on the altar every morning, there's more Russians than there are gringos. So, Srila Prabhupada would go someplace and preach a little bit, just like he preached in Africa. He went to Africa. There's a story that's told, wasn't in the movie. Prabhupada went to Africa and they hung Prabhupada's clothing on the line. And the servant came and told Prabhupada that his clothing's gone, it was stolen. And Prabhupada had other sets of dhoti and kurta. But he was giving the class, and there's one brahmachari, I think 2 brahmacharis, isn't it? Sitting in the class, wearing Prabhupada's dhoti and having Prabhupada's kurta. And Prabhupada tolerated it. It's okay. Let them have. So, who can imagine the compassion? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur predicted Prabhupada's coming. He predicted that soon people will come. He looked out of his place in Navadvip over at the property that is now ISKCON Mayapur, in Mayapur, said soon devotees will come all over the world. There will be one teacher, one devotee who will go and bring them and bring people from all over the world to chant and dance and serve Lord Krishna. And of course we know that's a fact. From every country in the world, Bhaktivinoda's prediction, because of our Srila Prabhupada, has come true. People from China, hundreds of devotees from China. Who would think? When I joined, I never thought there would ever be Chinese Hare Krishnas, African Hare Krishnas, Ruski Hare Krishnas. I thought I was the only Russian Hare Krishna because my grandma was a babushka. Who knew Prabhupada's expertise? Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew. During his stay at Jagannath Puri, Thakur Bhaktivinoda devoted much of his time to the discussion of spiritual works and prepared notes on the Vedanta Sutras, which were published with the commentaries of Baladev Vidyabhusana. He also composed the Kalyana Kalpataru, from which Bibari Sesha, one selection, appears in this book. This may very truly be termed an immortal work, and it stands on the same level as the divine writings of Narottam Das Thakur. In 1877, he left Puri on government service, and in 1881, he started a well-known spiritual journal called the Sajjana Toshini, the satisfaction of pure devotees. He also published the Sri Krishna Samhita, which revealed to the world the underlying philosophy explaining the spiritual existence of Krishna. This book opened the eyes of educated people to teach them their true relationship with God. It also attracted the admiration of many German scholars, for although the public regarded Krishna as a poetic creation of erotic nature, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur revealed Krishna as Parabrahman, the supreme transcendental person, the absolute being, on the basis of Vedic evidence. At the close of his stay at the village of Narail, he visited Vrindavan. There he had to encounter a hand of dacoits known as Kanjaras. These powerful bandits spread all over the roads surrounding the holy place and used to attack innocent pilgrims. Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought this news to the government, and after many months of struggle, extirpated the bandits from Vrindavan forever. From this time on, Thakur Bhaktivinoda preached extensively in large gatherings, explaining all the precepts of the Sankirtan of the holy names Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. While staying at Barashat, Thakur Bhaktivinoda met the famous Bengali writer Bankim Chandra. This novelist and playwright had just finished writing a book on Krishna, and knowing Srila Bhaktivinoda to be an authority on topics of Krishna, he gave the manuscript to Bhaktivinoda Thakur to see. It was full of mundane Western stylized speculations and ideas, but after 4 days of discussion, Bhaktivinoda had the whole text revised by Bankim Chandra to accommodate the pure super-mundane precepts of Lord Chaitanya. During his last year at Barashat, Bhaktivinoda was requested by a noted high court judge to publish an authoritative edition of Srimad Bhagavad Gita with the commentaries of Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, as well as his own Bhaktivinoda Thakur's translation. The preface, written by Bhakti Machandra, expressed his gratitude to the Thakur for his endeavor, and when it was published, the copies were soon exhausted. Then Thakur Bhaktivinoda published a unique work entitled Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, the Nectarine Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which dealt with Lord Chaitanya's theistic philosophy and the philosophies of the Western speculators. This book deletes every other philosophy point for point and established the philosophy of Lord Chaitanya as supreme. There's a book written by Srila Prabhupada based on same principle. All the philosophies of the Western philosophers, with Srila Prabhupada presenting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's version. And at first the book was published, Srila Prabhupada wanted his lectures published, as dialectical spiritualism, which may be available in the gift shop. It was written years and years ago, in the mid-70s. Later, our BBT, under Srivas Prabhu, compiled a short version of that book from Srila Prabhupada's lectures, and that book is called Quest for Enlightenment, having the philosophy of the Western and Eastern philosophers with the version that Srila Prabhupada gave of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just as Bhaktivinoda Thakur had done in his book, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita? Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. In 1885, he started a society named Sri Vishva Vaishnava Rajasabha, VVRS, for the propagation of pure Hari Bhakti. Many eminent citizens of Calcutta joined the society, and several committees were organized with assigned duties. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was so anxious to see the land of Lord Chaitanya that he applied many times for a transfer to any town nearby. Upon not receiving the desired transfer, he formally submitted resignation from public service, but it was refused. Then, to his great rejoicing, he obtained a transfer to Krishnanagar, 25 miles from Navadvip, Mayapur. Once stationed at a place near Navadvip, he did not let a single free moment pass without visiting the land of Navadvip. He at once made inquiries about the exact whereabouts of the different places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. He soon discovered the then city of Navadvip was a town of only 100 years standing, so he was curious to locate the actual place of Lord Chaitanya. He was convinced that the town of Navadvip was not the authentic location, and he at once commenced a vigorous inquiry to find the truth of the matter. But he could not easily escape from the people who tried to make him believe that the birthplace of Chaitanya was at that town. Then, after careful inquiry, he was told that the site was lost under the shifting course at the Ganga. Not satisfied with the explanation, he himself set out to discover the Yoga Peeth birthplace. After great difficulties, he came to know of a place which was being adored by many realized souls as the true birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and which was then in the possession of the Mohammedans. Local inquiry and corroborative evidence from ancient maps of the latter part of the 18th century, which showed the name Sri Mayapur, at last helped him to discover the real site of the birthplace. The discovery led to the publishing of a valuable work called Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. Chapter 5 of this book has appeared in ISKCON's Bengali Back to Godhead magazine. The year 1895 was the most eventful year in the history of the Vaishnava world, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the prime mover of the events. It was in this year that he officially memorialized the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya and brought its true identity and importance before the public eye. Thousands of visitors were present at a function held at the spot. And also we should note that our Srila Prabhupada was born in this world in 1896. So 1 year after this historical year of 1895 in which Bhaktivinoda Thakur was preaching. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the father of our Param Guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So the disciplic succession goes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur to Jagannath Das Babaji. Kishore, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to our Srila Prabhupada, and our ISKCON spiritual masters. Just after retiring for government service, Bhaktivinoda Thakur Bhaktivinoda himself, in a spirit of perfect humility and with a view to give a firm standing to the discovery, went from door to door to raise funds for a temple. In the Amrit Bazar Patrika newspaper on December 6, 1894, the following article appeared. Babu Kedarnath Dutt, that was his birth name, the distinguished deputy magistrate who has just retired from the service, is one of the most active members. Indeed, Babu Kedarnath Dutt has been deputed by his committee to raise subscriptions to Calcutta and elsewhere, and is determined to go from house to house if necessary and beg a rupee from each Hindu gentleman for the noble purpose. Of course, a rupee these days, of course, then it was more, and in India it was $1. But a rupee is, I believe, less than 2 cents. Penny and a half. Penny and 3/4. Isn't it? 1 rupee? 60 rupees is $1. 70 rupees $1. If Babu Kedarnath sticks to the resolution of going around with a bag in hand, we hope that no Hindu gentleman whose house may be honored by the presence of such a devout bhakta as Babu Kedarnath will send him away without contributing his mite, however humble it may be, to the Gaur Vishnu Priya Temple Fund. Truly, Thakur Bhaktivinoda honored the houses of many persons for the fulfillment of the noble object he had undertaken. He went to persons to whom he would not have gone for any purpose but for his mission of Lord Chaitanya, and his efforts were not fruitless, since the sum collected contributed to the construction of a building on the holy site of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. You'll be happy to know that although this newspaper, common newspaper, came out with this wonderful article about Thakur Bhaktivinoda, this morning the Los Angeles Times, the most famous paper in all of Los Angeles, before the sun rose, gave a beautiful review of the movie that showed last night and will be showing all week, Hare Krishna, at the Lemley Theater, 1322 2nd Avenue, 2nd Street in Santa Monica. And they wrote a wonderful, I didn't see it yet, but I was told, is good? Very beautiful review of our Hare Krishna movie. The work of preaching the holy name was also in full swing, and it spread fast in the distant corners of the globe. The Gauranga Smarana Mangala Stotra, with a preface in English containing the life and precepts of Sri Chaitanya, came out from Bhaktivinoda's pen soon after the discovery of Lord Chaitanya's birthplace and found its place in all the learned institutions of both hemispheres. The more the names of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna were preached, the merrier was Thakura Bhaktivinoda. He thereafter made annotations of Sri Brahma Samhita and Sri Krishna Karnamrita and gave to the world his immortal and precious works, Sri Harinam Chintamani and Bhajana Rahasya. He also edited with commentary Srimad Bhagavatarka Marichi Mala, which contains all the most prominent shlokas of the Srimad Bhagavatam pertaining to the Vaishnava philosophy. His pen never tired and produced many other Vaishnava philosophical works. He'd begin his writings very late at night after completing his government work and stay up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning composing songs and literature. Most of his works appeared in the Sajjana Toshini magazine. He was equally engaged in writing and in preaching the holy name in many districts of Bengal. His personal appearances at villages had marvelous effects on the people. To maintain the center at Nadia, he built a house at Trigodromadweep, which is called Sri Swananda Sukara Kunja. Here, in this abode, the preaching of Harinam continued in full swing. We heard in the movie Hare Krishna yesterday how Srila Prabhupada would also stay up till 1, 2 in the morning, sleep 2 or 3 hours, meet with so many visitors, guests, and devotees, manage the movement by writing letters to thousands of disciples, all of his disciples, on everything, including what herbal medicines to take. One Mataji had written, I think her child, was it? Chaitanya? Her child was sick. Prabhupada told her what medicine to use. And even they had one picture, Prabhupada holding the hand for a few minutes. Blonde-haired boy, kind of looked like a girl, 1 year old. I don't think people knew that was Shivananda, or Shiva, our Shiva, who was always at the temple. That was him. I knew when I saw that. Prabhupada was holding his hand, he was one. And they showed that part for maybe 30 seconds. It wasn't it? People were like, who's that kid? That was Shiva. Shiva, what's it? Shivadar? No, I think his name's whatever. You'll see him today. So, the more the name, it was, this is one more paragraph, then we're done. It was at the beginning of the 20th century that he chose to live at Puri and built a house on the beachfront. Many honest souls sought his blessings and readily obtained them when he accepted renounced out of life by taking Babaji, initiation from Sri Gaurkishore Das Babaji in 1908. Though he was leading the life of a renounced soul, he could not avoid the men of all description who constantly visited him, as did Prabhupada. Prabhupada, even someone came to Prabhupada one time with toilet tissues. And devotees were like looking. He was kind of a crazy man in New York. And Prabhupada said that's the beginning of his devotional service. Another time, a person came to Prabhupada, said, Swami, I was today at 2 o'clock, I was higher than you. Prabhupada said, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhupada said that. And devotees were looking. And Prabhupada said, if you have no other business, you can go now. So many, even rascals, were coming before Prabhupada. We were there personally in the House of Flowers. Someone stood up and said, Srila Prabhupada, or said, Swamiji, according to Baha'u'llah, Prabhupada said, sit down. We're speaking of Krishna. And he remained standing. He said, well, Baha'u'llah says, Prabhupada said, we are not talking about Baha'u'llah, we are talking about Lord Krishna. And he said, but the Baha'i faith, Prabhupada said, sit down, be quiet, we are speaking of Krishna. And when I heard that, I knew that third response, this is my guru. I was a karmi, and I was visiting 1971. And when I heard that in the House of Flowers, San Francisco, I was convinced then, oh, this is my guru. He is not accepting any nonsense. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakura, who wouldn't even let any of these rascals who had mystic power bother the devotees. Many, all of them received oceans of spiritual training, instruction, and blessing. In 1910, he shut himself up and remained in a perfect state of samadhi, full concentration on the eternal pastimes of the Lord, eternal pastimes. In 1914, he passed on to the blissful realm of Goloka on the day which is observed as the disappearance day of Sri Yadadhar. Here we quote a stanza written about the Samadhi of Haridas Thakura, which Srila Bhaktivinoda wrote sometime in 1871 to explain what influence a Vaishnav carries in this world even after his departure. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, he reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Please repeat. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. Today you can say that mantra over and over. Everyone should memorize. Tomorrow morning there'll be a test. Srila Bhaktivinoda predicted soon there will appear a personality who will preach the holy name of Hari all over the world. It's clearly understood. That is divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada is that personality. I offer my prostrate obeisance first unto all the devotees that were surrendered unto his divine lotus feet, and next unto the devotees who will in the future take shelter of his lotus feet, and then offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet again and again. May he bless this first translation attempt so that it may be accepted by the Lord Sri Krishna, and may he engage me in the service of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, Lord Chaitanya and Radharani. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. It was actually written, I didn't read it, by Achyutananda Swami.
Okay, yeah.
And it was on August 20, 1972,
Okay.
at the Radha Damodar